If it's not fun, why bother?
You're listening to the Logic and Pixels podcast.
All of this just works. I'm not kidding.
Logic and Pixels, episode numero 1, the pilot episode. Adam aka CS Radical here with you guys. I got my buddy Avery here with me on this new feature podcast where we talk about various video game topics, mostly just in the idea of trying to make things a little bit better. So yeah, my co-host Avery is here with me. How are you doing on this fine Saturday afternoon?
I'm doing good, my man.
It is, it's December. So, as much as you try to make it as good as you are, obviously we're not living in some, amazing, super warm area, whenever I look at Florida and people would be like, oh, it's going to be 50 degrees Fahrenheit today. I'd be like, fuck you.
Oh, yeah.
I would kill for 50. I don't even know what 50 is. I'm a Canadian. I don't know what the hell that is. It sounds not 0 degrees Celsius, which is already a plus for me.
I think it's like 50-something here, so I truly probably am doing better than you are as far as that's concerned.
It's not snowing. It snowed once at the beginning of the month. After that, it's been fine. So yeah. I will take what I can on the 5th of December where I can still walk out without a giant winter jacket and a shit ton of extra layers on, so I'm not complaining just yet. But I know it's coming.
Oh yeah, for sure. For us, usually where I'm at, normally, we don't get snow typically until the end of February or the beginning of March. So
fortunately, I would kill for that. Oh.
Fortunately, I don't have that much. I have a good bit of a wait, and even then, it's only a week of just awful, and then after that week of awful things, just kind of smooth out and go back to normal. And spring comes, and it's all good. So I got a little while.
Well, speaking of a good long wait, this seems like a perfect tie-in to our topic of our first episode, which seemed to make the most sense because we are in a really, impatient time, but also exciting time at the same time, because, 2020's been what it's been. COVID has done what it's done to all of us mentally. So I think we're all in a pretty unstable state as it stands. However, at least there's been something to cap off this year, and for a lot of people, or at least for some people, I should say, it's been the new consoles. For many, though, it's been a, let's say, a very negative experience thus far as people are trying to get their hands on this thing, just to try to make the holidays seem a little bit more, interesting.
Oh, yeah. Fortunately for me, I've not had to wait. I was very, very fortunate, and I managed myself to get a Series X pre-order in. And I was like, oh my God. When I got that, I thought I'd got the holy grail. Yes! And it was awesome. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. There are a lot of people that have not gotten it. And, they're keeping eagle eyes on their emails and they're refreshing Walmart, Target, Best Buy, whatever, trying to see if they can get one. And, it's unfortunate. One thing I saw somewhere was I think it was a scalper group that was
the 3,000 plus one.
Yeah, I think so. They were scooping up all these PS5s, and they were like, "Hey, we're putting food on the table, and we're doing this, and we're doing that." And I'm thinking, dude, if these scalpers have enough money to buy a butt ton of these PS5s,
if you have the disposable income to do this kind of stuff, no, you're not already putting food on the table.
You don't need to worry about exactly. That's not something that you need to be concerned with at that
You're not
point.
putting food on the table, you're putting caviar on the table.
Right. And a lot of these kids, someone I work with, for an example, they went out to a local GameStop at 3 o'clock in the morning. I think it was on
Was he
Friday?
The guy that had an air mattress set up next to a GameStop? Because I saw those pictures.
No, but when he did get there, he legit, there were 2 tents outside the store where people had already been set up there, around lunchtime, Thanksgiving Day, where they had been there camping out, and our store only had, I think, two disc editions and 2 digital editions. And there were already 8 people in line. So, he just turned around and he went home. And, he really wants to get this PS5. And I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. So
I've noticed too that it seems like the PS5 is the worst of it, because I have not seen, and it might also be because I am in more of a PlayStation bubble. I have a PS5 myself, so I'm in the thick of it. But I've noticed, at least from what I've, like, whether it's Twitter or Reddit or whatever else, it seems like the PlayStation 5 specifically is having a little more strife, and I think it's also because they're selling faster. Because, I mean, we'll obviously get into it as we talk further into this future cycle of consoles that we're getting into, but I think because of the library and the other newer tech, like, say, the DualSense or the 3D audio, that I think it did get that extra bit of buzz. So I think people are more curious about this console than they would be the Series X right now. So I think, at least from most of the strife that we do see, it comes from the PlayStation, because I think it is selling harder to begin with.
I think you're right, too. Like, coming from, and you just said you come from, like, the PlayStation bubble, so to speak, and I personally come from an Xbox bubble. My first new home console was an Xbox. I've had every Xbox that's come out since then, and I play on Xbox. Like, that's my blood. Like, I bleed green, probably. So that's just what I do.
You might want to see a
personally.
doctor about that, honestly. I'm just letting you know.
Probably. But yeah, like, I love Xbox, and, like, even coming from someone who claims to be in the Xbox bubble, like, I agree, like, 100%. Like, the PS5 definitely seems to be the area where there's the most strife as far as trying to get one. Coming from someone who was really excited to get their Series X, and I finally did get it, I don't even have the PS5, and I can already agree with some of the reviewers who have been making the comments like, oh yeah, this definitely feels like the premier next-gen experience, because you have the DualSense controller, you have all the new stuff, and there's all of that. And the Series X, like, yes, it is a new console, yes, it is more powerful, but at the same time, it's like you're basically getting the same controller. You don't have any exclusives at launch, so you're just replaying the same Xbox One games, but at higher frame rates and visual fidelity, which that doesn't necessarily bother me, because there are a lot of games in my back catalog I'm trying to clear out anyway, and if I can clear them out and get the best experience, then that's fine.
Yeah, it really depends on what you were getting the console for. I mean, I've got a PS5, and I've really only played Astro's Playroom and Bugsnax are like my PS5 games. I don't have Demon's Souls, I don't have Miles Morales yet, and that's mostly because, I'm not the kind of guy that likes getting games when they first come out. I don't like especially now here in Canada, it's an $80 price tag for new games. So it's not the easiest one to swallow. And I mean, I still have a pretty big backlog, with Cyberpunk on the horizon as well, coming out next week. So there's a lot there that I don't need to go out of my way. But I mean, with Xbox users, I think it even also comes into just the fact that the library is so small to start with. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the best comment that I've seen about the Series X, honestly, is that it's not necessarily a new console so much as it's almost like a PC upgrade. It's like you've just upgraded your PC to add, like, a better graphics card. You've put, like, a really nice SSD in there. Like, it feels more like that, which, again, is not a bad thing. Especially if you've missed a generation, like, this console literally feels like a massive leap. Whereas going from, say, an Xbox One, or even, like, a Pro, or not a Pro, I guess an Xbox One X. See, I'm the PlayStation guy. I'm mixing everything up. It's not exactly the biggest upgrade. It's still substantial enough that you notice it, but it's not like... It's not what we remember growing up when you go from Xbox to 360, or like PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2, or even like Super Nintendo to PlayStation, where you make that jump from 32-bit to full 3D graphics. So, and I think most people understood that. I think we all understood, or at least like the vast majority of us that can use our heads. Logic and pixels, I should say, right?
Yeah.
Most of us understood that this generation had nothing to do with like this being the most realistic looking games we've ever seen. This isn't, the first time we've seen 3D graphics. This isn't the first time that we've seen like really good light shading or really good like textures. It was more about the power, the raw processing power. So things were faster, 60 frames per second, the ability for loading times to be a thing of the past, for a lot of texture pop-in to not come up, because especially anybody who plays low settings on PC, you know how easy it is to just see things pop into frame. So the most of us understood that this was all about just making things faster and more efficient, and then anything else after that was going to be a plus. And that's kind of what the PlayStation's been for me. Like, just play. If there was no like extra rumbling in the controller like the DualSense has or the 3D audio, this would still be a great console, but the extra stuff is just like that cherry on top.
Exactly. And going back to something you said too, is like talking about how all like you're not necessarily getting any of the newer games and all of that. Like, with those games, for an example, Spider-Man Miles Morales. That was a game that it came out on PS5, but it also came out on PS4. I know I just said like, hey, I bleed green. I love Xbox. PS4 was my first PlayStation system, and I literally bought it just because of like all the good exclusives, and I was like, I want to play these games. But anyway, so Miles Morales, it came out on PS4 and PS5, and I can't. And even Sony made a comment before this whole thing got going, new generation of how, we believe in generations. Like, we believe that there should be gaps and there should be distinctive differences. But yet at the same time, it's like, okay, yes, granted, Demon's Souls is a PS5 exclusive game, but Miles Morales and Horizon Forbidden West, they're both confirmed to be on both PS4 and PS5. So I can't help but think that maybe they knew there was going to be a stock issue.
Well, I think they knew that was going to be the case because of COVID. I don't know if the pandemic happens that this gets changed. I think if we don't have the pandemic, I think Spider-Man Miles Morales is a PS5 launch title and there's nothing else. Because it's really easy to just downgrade a game at this point and just plop it on PlayStation 4. That wasn't going to be the issue. I think once they knew that how bad things were, they probably scrambled. Thank God Miles Morales is a really easy game to finish because it's such a short game. So, and also, it's mostly reusing assets from the PlayStation 4 version, so it became really easy, I think, for that one. Forbidden West is going to be interesting because I don't know how far along they are, because they haven't given an official release date yet. So that's the part that I'm like, okay, that might be the interesting game when it comes to how it downsizes. So that's because it's like how people are thinking that Cyberpunk might be a little bit rough for PlayStation 4 because it sounds like it was probably being made with the new generation in mind. But I think with this specific case, like, and I get your comment on the generation stuff, and I kind of agree with it too. I think it should have been a little bit more substantial, but I think because obviously this year has been the way that this year has been, some stuff had to be kind of capitulated just to kind of make at least some people feel like they're not missing out, because that's been the big thing too with a lot of the strife that we see out there is the people think that they're like that fear of missing out sort of deal, where they think that if they don't get this thing, they're going to miss a lot. At least with Miles Morales being on PlayStation 4, for example, it gives people that sense of like, okay, if I don't get this thing for 6 months to a year, I'm not going to miss everything. I might miss like one or two things, but at least I'm not missing what might be like the biggest game from this year.
Right. And another thing that I've seen, again, I don't know how much credibility there is behind this statement, but, with Miles Morales and Horizon both being on PS4 and PS5, of course, obviously, there's the rumor that God of War Ragnarok might also be on both. But this is just my take on it. I personally think that will totally and completely hinge on the success of Horizon Forbidden West on the PS4. Like, okay,
I actually think it just has more to do with when the game comes out. If God of War is going to come out in the next 12 months, there's no reason why they wouldn't. I think if this is a 2-year process, I think you can wait. I think you can easily put this for PlayStation 5 and not have to think about it. Because by then, COVID's gone, you have a chance to really ramp up the stock again, and you've had plenty of time to get the console out to people who need it. I think it's going to be more of just based on how much time they have to get more consoles out in the market. If they don't have enough time in their opinions, then yeah, I can see them pushing it onto PlayStation 4 as well.
Or it could be a situation, too, where, it was like Bayonetta 3 and Metroid Prime 4 for the Switch, where it's like, hey, or Breath of the Wild 2 even for that matter, where it's like, hey, we are announcing that we are making these games, but that's all we have to say about it.
I mean, that's what CD Projekt Red did, and Cyberpunk took 8 years. So
exactly.
And Bethesda still, can't get past the fact that they have announced a bunch of games, and we still don't even know like which part of the decade they're coming in for. So.
Right. And so maybe it's one of those things where they're taking a page out of CD Projekt Red or Nintendo or Bethesda's book where it's like, hey, God of War Ragnarok is happening. It is coming. And if anyone's played that game and they saw the cutscene at the end of the credits, like, you obviously knew that, okay, this is going to be a thing. Just, I feel like them just kind of coming out and saying, hey, this is happening, is more of a courtesy than it was anything else.
Yeah, I could see that. It would make sense too, because we've noticed a lot with all these digital video packages that they've been doing since there's no E3, there's no Gamescom, all these press conferences have been moot and gone. Although apparently PAX is preparing for in-people next year, which is interesting. I mean, it depends on when that is. I mean, if it's in the summer, there's a chance. If it's anywhere sooner than that, I'm not even convinced E3 is coming back this year or in 2021. But I think with all these video packages, they figure, okay, well, enough people are tuning into these things that we got to give them something to hinge on, because Lord knows anybody's like just dying for that dopamine fix of just some level of excitement. So I've noticed a lot of companies seemingly are just kind of pulling names out of their asses just to get people's attention, get them talking, because Lord knows they need to say something that so they're trending over like the million of COVID or election stuff or world issues that are going on out there, when it's so hard to get that trend going when there's so much else to worry about.
I agree, like 110%. I mean, especially, you know, with everything going on. And one thing I've seen recently was how with COVID and the election here in America and everything else, you know, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of anxiety, and how video games they are like an escape. And this is just me personally talking about the Game Awards. Animal Crossing New Horizons. It is a nominee for Game of the Year. Now, I personally haven't played Animal Crossing, as it just doesn't seem like my type of game. But when you look at some of the other games that it stacked up against, it could be perceived that, you know, it was a game that came out at the perfect time. Like, it's
100%.
It's right at the beginning of the pandemic. It's a game that you can sink hundreds and hundreds of hours into.
And it almost feels like a second life, so it's like you're getting out of the misery and having a different life somewhere.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like, it came out at the perfect time, because it was something you could do that was somewhat similar to what you were doing before, but it's also that relieving escape. And so now I feel like 2020 video games have been at the forefront of pop culture now, and I think that can also kind of contribute to the stock shortages that we're seeing with PS5 and Series
100%.
X and Series S, because now it's like, hey, these are the new, and I mean, we live in a society now where it's like we're so fixated. Most people are so fixated on, like, dude, we got to get the new technology. We got to get the new iPhone. We got to get the new TVs. We got to get the
don't
new
get me
games.
started on the $1,000+ iPhones. Oh,
yeah. So it's like, you know, we're in this society now, and I hate to sound like Arthur Fleck from Joker, like, we live in a society, but no, it's like we are in a society now where it's like people need, or they feel like they need anyway, to consistently be on the bleeding edge. And when we are in the pandemic age, people are staying home, they're staying inside, they need something to do, and they want the newest of the new. They're obviously going to coast or gravitate towards these newer consoles and these newer systems. And there are really scummy people out there that see that, and they want to take advantage of that. And that's why you have, like you said earlier, there are suppliers or scalpers that are buying up PS5s, and they have more stock and more supply than what the actual retailers are getting. And like, just for kicks and giggles, like, I personally don't want a PS5 right now, because there's not big enough of a reason for me to pursue that. Because if I can play Miles Morales and Horizon Forbidden West on my PS4, then that's what I'm going to do. But
yeah, I mean, I never necessarily wanted one. Like, I wanted one. I didn't need one.
About to say, excuse me?
It just came down to the fact that, and I think a lot of people probably feel a similar way, is that 2020 has been such a horrible fucking year that it's like, man, I don't even care what it cost me at this point. I need something to cap off this year and just like give me some sort of positivity going in. And that's kind of where I stood. Now, I wouldn't have been the guy spending thousands of dollars on scalpers, but, you know, if I was going out of my way to try to find one, and I just got lucky that one of my friends ended up getting an extra one because him and his girlfriend were both trying to get one on the same day, and they both managed to snag one at the exact same time and didn't communicate it.
Oh,
so
awesome.
they just ended up buying two somehow. And I think that's why like so many people are having their own issues with this, is because 2020 has just created like every single negative emotion you can feel all in one. You feel lonely, you're bored, you're anxious, you're getting impatient, there's fear, there's all these things mixing together. And when you look at this one, like to you, the perceivably one light left, which is this console that seems like it's the coolest thing you'll ever get to put in your house, and you can't get it. And that just creates some people into their breaking point.
There's something I like to call the cookie jar mentality. You know, growing up when you were a kid and your mom's making dinner and she's like, hey, you know, you can't have like you're hungry, you want a snack, but your parents are like, dude, you can't have a cookie. Like I'm making this supper for you to eat. Like, I don't want you to ruin your supper. You can't have a cookie. Just by being told you can't have it makes you want it a million times more. And I think that's something that's really also kind of ramping everything up as far as the desire and the want to get one as well.
It's not even like the cliche cookie in the jar either. Like the PS5 to people, it looks like freshly baked, like gourmet triple chocolate chip cookie with like this extra little bit of like icing on top that's just gooey and melty and fucking glorious. See, it's that kind of cookie and not like a digestive cookie or some shit. So it's really easy to want to put your hand in that cookie jar.
Exactly.
That's a really nice looking cookie jar.
Oh yeah. It's just for kicks and giggles. Sometimes I just like to go at eBay and I just sort the prices from highest to lowest, and I just like to go and scroll through the eBay app and just look through everything, and it is mind-boggling how expensive some of those things are. Now, granted, you know, you're looking at highest to lowest, and there are reports of people who have created bots to artificially inflate bids, which I think is awesome, just to kind of give a big screw you to the scalpers. But, you know, and it's on one hand, like, you know, it's a very odd thing, you know, because it's like on one hand, it's like, yes, I really want this new console, right? But on the other hand, it's like, how far are you willing to go to get it? Like, are you going to be willing to fork out like $1,500, $2,000? Like, again, this is just me, and I'm only thinking from the realm of my situation and my circumstances. But heck no, I'm not about to fork out. I'm not about to fork out like $2,000 for a PS5. Like I'm gonna wait until like a year or two from now, when hopefully, you know, the pandemic is over. There's more supply on the shelves. Scalpers have not necessarily given up, but they've at least, you know, come down a little bit, because the majority of people probably aren't going to pay $1,000 for a PS5. And eventually, in about a year or two, hey, like, not only will there be more availability, but you'll also have a bigger catalog to get into and buy for your system. Some people, they've got it like that. They can just piss away $2,000 on a PS5, and if you can do that, hey man, and you want it, go for it. Good for you. But
I'm still going to call you an asshole.
Exactly, you know, and it's just, I don't know, man. Like, and see, here's that one person that can go out and do that. That is going to be the one person, because like if one person can go and do that, and a scalper is like, hey, if one person's willing to do it, like the other 99% don't even matter. The fact that we can still cater to the 1%. And again, that's why I say, like, it might not completely go away. They might drop their prices. They might not buy up as many. But I don't know. Like,
it'll be dependent on when the stock replenishes consistently. It'll be when the supply and demand starts to even itself out. Because again, we're still in this early stage where I think only about maybe 2.5 to 3 million consoles have shipped. So it's still in the early stages. So it's going to be very easy for stock to run in and out. Although Sony's not doing what Nintendo likes to do, which is holding back stock because they want to always create that way too much of a demand. Sony is trying to fulfill as much as they can, at least to our knowledge. So I would imagine by the time we hit summer, it should fix itself, because by then there's enough time to really get some consoles in now, because now they know what the demand is. Now they know how much ordering they can ramp up. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the scalpers, it'll just take time for them to realize, oh crap, there's just too much stock out there now. Okay, maybe I should just try to sell it at market value now and just try to at least get my money back as quickly as I can.
Right. One thing I've seen, Phil Spencer did an interview recently, and he mentioned the possibility of maybe even doing like a deposit system where, let's say you put down like $100 or $50 for a console, and then like they more or less like they say, okay, we have your money, we're going to start building your console. And then they'll send you an email when it's manufactured and in the box. They send you another email when it ships out, and you can pay the rest of it after your console has been manufactured right before it ships. And that
like it flags it being like, hey, your console is ready, please finish the rest of the payment. Or it could just say, we'll automatically take it out of if you use a credit card, we'll automatically flag it and take it if you want to ship it, or it'll give you the warning kind of deal.
And if you don't pay it, and for example, if you choose for it to not be automatic, if you don't pay it in like an extended period of time, then you forfeit your console and it just gets muddled up with the rest of the general stock. I think something like that would be awesome, because then like you're securing your console, and you don't have to get into that 30 seconds before they sell out on Walmart, Best Buy, Target, GameStop, Amazon. And it's like you're not in this constant battle of, hit the refresh button, but instead it's like you have that peace of mind. It's like, all right, I put $100 deposit down, I have my console, I'll pay the rest of it when it's done.
Yeah, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Exactly.
And for the scalpers, it's like, I don't have $2,000, but I do have time. And I think that if they establish that system and they get that going, I think for sure, definitely, people will definitely be willing to wait the 1 or 2 or 3 months or however long it takes for their system to be built, just so that knowing that they can get it instead of getting...
Yeah, they know that as soon as they can get it, they'll get it.
Exactly. Instead of paying $2,000 up front and getting it a week later, I would much, much, much rather pay $100 now, wait 4 months, 3 months or whatever, however long it takes, and then pay $400 and get it then. And then that also gives you extra time to save money for it and all that other good stuff.
Now, I figure they probably won't do that because I think it's too late now for them to build the infrastructure to do it. Because it seems almost pointless once, things get relatively back to normal in the next 6 months, assuming that's the pathway we're on.
Right.
So they'll probably think, maybe it's something we'll look into the next time we have a major launch or something.
Like for mid-generation refresh.
Yeah, if they do a new model or something.
Like a PS5 Pro or the Xbox Series...
Series Y?
X.2. I don't know whatever dumb name they feel like coming up with next.
X Square?
Maybe? I don't know. But whatever the next, or they can take the Nintendo route, the new Xbox Series X. But, yeah, that was...
I hate that name.
But, whatever the mid-gen refresh happens to be, they could probably implement it then, or at least do a trial run of it. And then when the next generation comes around, that can be in full effect for everyone, kind of like what they did with Xbox All Access. They started out with the Xbox One S and the One X, and I believe they only did it at select retailers. Now I might be wrong, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I think they only did it at select retailers in the U.S. And then when they did that after it, it was okay, whatever. And now it's okay, hey, new console generation. All Access is available at every retailer for everybody except Amazon, because for whatever reason, they didn't want to participate. So, and maybe that would be cool to see, but, who knows? People in the U.S. or North America or whatever might be able to put $100 down on a PS5 Pro, and then they'll get it 4 months later. That'd be pretty cool to see. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it'd be pretty cool.
Man, I'm still waiting for Sony to get off their ass and do what Microsoft does with custom controllers. That's just the one thing I want from them. I don't care about any other payment shit now. It's like, man, give me a way to get my custom skins on.
My favorite PS4 controller was the Crystal series. I had Crystal Clear, Crystal Blue, or was it Blue Crystal? I don't know. But they made a red one. And I really wanted the red one. I could never find it. And they have like a lot of different other colors, and it would be really, really cool if you could take some of those colors or some of those like transparent or translucent shells, and you could just swap whatever back pieces or front pieces on or whatever. Like there was a I think it was the forest green or it was some kind of dark green. It looked really cool. But the back piece of it was white. And that white and green, I don't know, it was just me. It really reminded me of Michigan State University. And I was just like, nah, like I'm not a Trojan Spartans fan, whatever. That's not me. And it would be cool if I had like the black buttons and a black back with just that nice green front. That black and green would look really cool.
Well, you see with the DualSense controller now, like there's definitely a lot of potential to have some really neat color designs with it, because you have all the white on the sides, but you have that black center. So you have like a really interesting way to contrast the designs to it. Like it really I really do like the look of the controller. It really does pop nicely. And it's just a matter of like, okay, can we find a way to get a decent custom job done without having to go to like Scuff or some website that charges way too much extra on top of it? Because like I look at what the Xbox controllers cost through Microsoft's own thing, and then you go to any other website and you're paying at least an extra $20 on top of it for the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're getting it directly from the manufacturer, like that would be the greatest option. And that's what's kind of kept me from playing, because I know friends that go nuts with the custom controller stuff, and I can't be bothered to do it, because not even because like I don't have the money to buy it in the first place, but it's also just, even if I had the money, it doesn't seem like a sound investment when you're paying way too much just to get a red controller with a little bit of blue in it. Like, you know, it just seems like a little bit too much to do so little.
Right. I personally, I'm a sucker for custom controllers and special edition controllers and everything else. Like, whether it was the PS4 or my Xbox One controllers, like, I don't know why. I just really like it. Like I have the Cyberpunk controller sitting on my desk, and my PC is like all red and black themed, so it looks good. The Sea of Thieves one is like my crown jewel. That translucent purple is just gorgeous. With this Xbox Design Lab and their custom controller stuff that they have going on, when they bring that back, I'm actually kind of excited to see what they might end up doing with it. Because now that like the Series 2 Elite controller is like their staple Elite like Pro controller, and with the Series Core controller, whatever they want to call that now, and just I really, really hope that there is an option at least to have like a custom made Elite controller. I think that'd be pretty cool. I'm probably
the day that Sony does it, like it's not even that I buy them right away. I would just love to sit there and just like play with it and just see like what combinations I could come up with. It's the same when you're like, it's like when you're building a PC. Like even if you don't intend to buy a PC at that point, just going on a website and just messing with parts and trying to find like just that perfect combination for you. It's just fun in that own aspect.
There's some pretty cool mock-ups I've seen online of just custom DualSense controllers and custom consoles. And then, of course, too, there's already been people that have made swappable faceplates for it and who have swapped them out. I think I saw one dude on YouTube, and he made or bought or somehow got like a custom Spider-Man faceplate for his PS5.
I think I know which one you're talking about, yeah.
And he decked out his controller. And I'm like, dude, that looks cool.
when you got people that know what they're doing, some crazy shit can come out. I can't wait to see what happens with, like, say, a Horizon Forbidden West one or just anything else like that. Like, some of the amazing designs that people come up with are just the ingenuity that we always see when it comes to creative ability, when it comes to, like, the gaming community as a whole is just, sometimes it just shocks me, even though I shouldn't be surprised at this point.
Like, one thing, I hope they do this. And again, Sony being Sony, and after the huge victory of the PS4, the previous generation, they're kind of in this cocky position almost now. or at least one would think that they are anyway. I hope that they do this, but with the PS4 Pro Special Edition models, some of them, they looked really, really good, but they were really, really limited. Like you had the Spider-Man one, that was my personal favorite. That was one I always wanted, but I could never get my hands on it. There was the God of War one with the Frost Axe design. There was Death Stranding. That one looked pretty cool, and all of that. And given how those consoles are super limited, like I do think that they should still produce these super limited systems. But I also think that they now kind of, it has like the same, since the PS5 has like the same design, basically. Like it's just going to be the same through and through. I hope that what they can do is they will make swappable faceplates. So it's like if you want your PS5 to look like these special editions, you can buy the mass-produced faceplate and you can just swap them out. And so if you want that system, but you don't want to have to worry about paying an extra $500 for a system, for another system, like you won't have to do that. Now, again, Sony is a company. They do like money. So on one hand, they might just say, hey, buy another $500 console. But it would be really cool to see something like, hey, buy like a $30 or $50 faceplate set.
I think that's
PS5.
the depending factor, right? It's what they're going to charge for it. Not to mention, how many designs do they think people could own? It could be a really interesting experiment because they could be like, all right, guys, here's a Spider-Man one, here's a Astro's Playroom one, here's a Demon Souls one. Like we pump out a bunch of them and we see how well they sell. And if they see, oh wow, people are actually willing to like buy like more than one of these, then you could easily make the case that okay, they'll do it as much as they want. It really depends on that. Like they might just sit there and be like, do we think that somebody will buy more than one of these? Because if they buy only one, we just lost like $450 of potential money. It's like, that's going to be the interesting factor of something like that, I think.
One thing that Nintendo did with the oft-forgotten Game Boy Micro was that you had swappable faceplates on that as well. Now, I have a Game Boy Micro. I love my Game Boy Micro. And I swapped out faceplates on that thing like it was going out of style. And a lot of people who still actively use it, they do that as well. I mean, if you go to like a third-party website that sells like mod kits or parts for Game Boy Advances or whatever, like you can still buy third-party custom-made faceplates for the thing. Like it's still something that a lot of collectors need to look at and they'll spend their money on if they're trying to like refurbish a system or whatever, or if they just want to change, if they use it daily. So with the PS5, like I definitely think that there would be a market there because, I mean,
I agree.
Like there have already been third-party companies who have tried to made faceplates, but Sony shut them down.
Oh, not even that. It's just the fact of like how amazing, like how many en masse, how many threads about the faceplates have there been since they announced that? So you can tell that there's like definitely an open market of people that are just ready to just go ham on having like 5 different looks for their console, depending on what mood they're in.
And it might be one of those things like Sony just didn't think about it. Like it was like, oh, hey, here's this new PS5. And then someone off somewhere is like, oh, hey, I'm going to swap out my faceplates. I'm going to make a Spider-Man PS5 and it's going to look ridiculously awesome. And Sony's like, man, why didn't we think of that? And then they shut them down. Then they start doing it, Hopefully,
I mean, I don't even know if they have to shut them down so much as it's just like, okay, well, we just brand it and we get them in stores rather than third-party markets, right?
Right, that's true too.
It really depends on how badly they want to get into that. Because if they really wanted to, they could shut it down by just being like, okay, you want this stuff, Amazon sells it directly, Best Buy sells it directly, Walmart sells it directly, GameStop sells it directly. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to some random fucking website you don't know if you can trust or not? You can go right into the store and just look at them. You can touch it. You can see exactly what it looks like in the box. You don't have to worry about this custom paint job from a company that it might not be exactly what you sent them. Because when you work with like sending JPEGs as the design, sometimes that doesn't work out. So it really just depends on what they think as long as they price it fairly, in my honest opinion, I think they could make a shit ton of money with it. And I know that within the next 12 months, we'll know whether that's something they want to do or not. Because if they don't do it in 2021, I don't think there's any chance they're going to do it in the first place.
Speaking of third parties making peripherals for a system, I am really, really hoping that the Xbox expansion storage cards from those third parties that Microsoft has been talking about, I'm curious to see those. Like, what kind of different storage options we'll see and for what prices. Because, like,
that's my worry, is the price.
I want one because, like, no one wants to sit there, and granted, it's only like, 3 or 4 minutes depending on the game. It's going to get old after a while having to shift games around from an external drive to your internal SSD. And granted, these games now are probably going to be huge, so a terabyte would still, that extra terabyte would still fill up fast, but you wouldn't have to switch around as much or as often. And while that would be an amazing convenience, that convenience is not worth $220 to me right now.
That's the thing. Like, I'm still looking at getting a new SSD for my my PC because I'm only working on a hard drive right now. So I'm looking for a 1 terabyte SSD, and Canadian wise, like the cheapest ones that I'm finding are still $125, and that's like 2,000. I don't know what the speed. I think RPM is the speed I'm thinking about. I could be wrong in this. I'm still new to the PC tech, but like the ones that are required for the PS5, for example, need to be at least, I think, 5,000, and that's not cheap. Like, that's, for me, that's like 500. That's like another price of another PS5. So it's that specific thing that makes me worry. It's like, okay, how much am I willing to pay just to not have to move my shit around? And for me personally, unless like for like Horizon Forbidden West or games like that are suddenly 100 gigabytes, I don't know if I necessarily need to go that far, because my internet's at least strong enough that if I had to re-download it, it's not the worst thing in the world. I just put the console in rest mode overnight and then I'm okay. But I can see for a lot of people, especially those that I know, because the States are still, you guys in the States have some real issues still with ISPs when it comes to competition. So for a lot of people, especially if you live out in rural areas where you're not getting nearly as good internet, yeah, that SSD is a big deal. So it really does come down to like, okay, how much are you willing to pay before it gets to the point where it's like, man, like I can't.
Yeah, that's a big concern too. Something else to think about with all the SSD stuff is, like, you know, with PS5, they're sitting there saying like, oh, hey, like if you want one, you got to have NVMe Gen 4, 5, whatever, with M.2, and it's like, you know, to the general consumer, they see something like that and they're just going to look at it and they're going to be like, oh, you know. But it's like with Xbox, oh, hey, I buy this card and I put it in the back, and it's easy. Now, maybe at some point eventually, like, we're going to start seeing a lot of SSDs and such where it's like you got the badge or branding on it that it's like, hey, you can put this in your PS5, and then eventually, you know, it'll get more streamlined.
Oh, you will definitely see those in stores itself, like right next to all of your video game peripherals. That'll just have like, it'll be the thing, and it'll just, even if it's directly on the packaging, or if the distribution themselves or the manufacturer or the store even just puts a sticker on it saying PS5 compatible.
Yeah,
like they could definitely do that.
That's going to be pretty cool. See PC parts in the PlayStation section of an
that's the other
store.
wild thing about it, is that it really does feel like, and it did feel like for a moment before Nvidia and AMD came out with their new chips, it was just like, fuck you guys, we got this. But there was that moment in time that we thought, holy crap, console gaming is like right there with PC gaming. Now, price-wise, we might actually be better off, but in terms of just raw power, PC again is taken, you know, the top of the castle. But
absolutely, I love my Series X, don't get me wrong, but the PC I have now that I play games on has a 1050 Ti, so I'm really looking to upgrade that in some form or fashion.
Well, like the new 3060 Ti that's being rumored now?
Oh,
or at
yeah.
least is on its way out, because it's faster than a 2080 Super.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I think they dropped on Newegg the other day. I went to go look like a couple hours after the pre-orders opened up for them, and they were already all sold out. Like the only thing they had available was a pre-built system for like $1,000. And it's like if I can get like a similar quality out of my console at home, I've already bought and paid for it. Like I don't need to drop $1,000 on my pre.
Well, that's also been the thing too that kind of keeps me out of PC gaming now. I mean, granted, if I had the money, I probably would be a little bit more in depth in it. But it's the idea that like this console that I just bought cost me basically $700 Canadian, and it's done. I'm good. I don't have to think about anything else. Whereas when it comes to PCs, I look at what I have to get if to even match that, and it looks like I'd be paying like 4 digits, if not like $1,500, right? So it's just one of those things where it may not be the most powerful thing that's out there, but goddamn, like you're getting hell of a lot of bang for your buck, because there are a lot of articles coming out that are saying you can't build a PS5 equivalent on PC for $1,000. You can't, at least not right now.
That's another thing too. Is like these companies, they've got to be taking huge losses from these 100%. Consoles.
I mean,
like
Sony took the advantage with the digital console because now they don't have to think about it. If somebody buys a digital console, who cares what the loss is? You'll make it back in a year or two when all the digital sales go back to you because you're making every cent off of that.
Right.
The disc version, that's where it gets a little bit interesting.
So, and one thing too is like, just looking at all the consoles we have, right? Essentially, you have your Series S, your PS5s, and your Series X. So I look at the Series S, and I look at what it can do. I look at what it's capable of. And I'm like, dude, $300? Like, can you build a PC for what they're selling a Series S for? Like $300?
Yeah, like 1440p gaming.
I don't know.
On PC? I mean, you could maybe like build like everything upside of like maybe like your hard drive, and then you might be pretty damn close. But because of all the parts alone, I don't think you can.
Maybe you could buy your parts from Wish.com.
more like you could wish that this could.
Yeah,
that's about it.
Yeah, it's like you order a 2080 from Wish, and they end up sending you like a 770. It's like, yeah, that's what I wanted.
Now the interesting thing though is that like PC is almost taking on console stuff too, because Steam right now has already got a pretty good set of drivers updated for the DualSense, and in fact, Steam has said that they're working it out that they'll be able to offer tools for developers to even use the Rumble feature in the controller on PC games, which to me is fucking unreal to think about, because that seems unheard of that a console company would just share that without even like nixing that.
I really, really want a DualSense because I want the feature, like the vibration and all the extra rotors and everything else like that. And I was in a GameStop the other day, and I almost bought one, but I was like, bro, I would only be able to use this on a PC. Like, there's no reason to spend your money on this. Like, you don't have a PS5. You don't even know if games support it. And just finding out what you just said, they're trying to implement all the DualSense's features into these PC games. Now it's like, dude, that's pretty cool. Like, I might get a DualSense before I get a PS5. And
it's really the one thing that's made this feel like an actual like future generation, because the first time that I played Astro's Playroom, I actually like welled up, like just feeling that there's the point in the game where it actually like has each individual rumble like a piece or whatever, I don't know what you want to call it, but they all slowly start to build up, like the controller's filling up, and then they do other little gimmicks, like if you tilt it to the left or right, you can actually feel like stuff, like almost like something's falling around in your controller. And just that little moment was me being like, holy fuck, this would have blew my mind as a kid.
Right.
And even now, here I am at 32 years old, being like, this is fucking unreal. And it's the most simple thing in the world, but it's such a novel thing, kind of like what like VR gaming was, kind of like what the Wii initially was when you were playing like Wii Sports. It felt so like futuristic.
Absolutely. Like, talking about the DualSense, one of the things I saw was like the the triggers, like there's added tension on the triggers when you shoot a web in Miles Morales.
even Deathloop has come out and said that if your gun jams, you literally won't be able to like close the trigger.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I was like, dude, that's really cool. You know?
Like you imagine, like a lot of our friends play Destiny. Can you imagine like just that game alone with these kind of adaptive feedback? Just with the amount of insanity that goes on.
And on that note, I'll say, like, another game, there's a lot of insanity that happens is Borderlands 3. I am a huge Borderlands fan. I love Borderlands 3.
Oh, with all the gimmicky guns too. Imagine like all the different feelings you could get from that.
Oh yeah, and like the next gen upgrade, how they take advantage of the DualSense, it's wild. Like if you, for an example, like if you're using a gun and like it's because there's like the different elements to like the different guns and everything else. Like let's say you're shooting a gun that deals radiation damage, then the light in the controller turns yellow to match your radiation style gun. And I'm like, hey, that's kind of cool. And then how with the like there are certain guns that they require to be charged up before you fire them, and how the triggers will take advantage of stuff like that. And I'm like, man, that sounds really cool. Now, granted, I already have just about every Borderlands game on every platform I have, just because I love Borderlands. But if I ever get a PS5, I'm gonna buy it again for the PS5, just so like I can see this stuff and experience it. You know?
Well, when you think of the possibilities too, like obviously anything with like freeze damage, like you feel like almost like the gun's freezing in your hand, so you feel like that little like crystallization, like cracking. If you have like an electricity gun and you feel like almost the surge of power, like just like fizzing and or like buzzing in the controller. Flamethrowers, like there's the individual like spray, so you feel like the power coming in and out, like just the little things like that alone. And I mean, even just to simplify, like you play a Call of Duty game, not every like an AK-47 is going to sound different than a silenced M4. So like the even just the simplest possibilities seem so crazy. Like just playing Astros and being able to feel like what felt like individual raindrops on my controller or the sand blowing in the wind, like, and that's like just with them focusing on it. Can you imagine that level of focus if you were playing a game like say Uncharted or a Final Fantasy game, like where the immersion is supposed to be like that, or especially first-person games, especially when we see whatever PlayStation's got in store for their next VR system, because the rumor is they are doing a PSVR 2 to match with the PS5 specs. And that even might include haptic feedback within the headset, which is even more insane, if that's true.
Oh, man. That'd be wild.
I've wanted to get a PSVR for a while, and I might bypass some things to try a VR officially for the first time with that, because at least with the PlayStation VR, you don't require needing a full empty room to make it work. You just sit down and you're fine. Because I've played a little bit. I've played Borderlands in VR at a friend's place, and it's fucking great. Like, that's the kind of shit I like, because it's not you like moving all over the place. It's just your head's the camera. That's really the gist of it. And that's the kind of thing that's, if you add that haptic feedback, the endless possibilities to make this feel like truly futuristic gameplay is just incredible.
And that's the thing too, is like I feel like the PS5, their main focus obviously is like, of course, with anything else with Sony and single player games. But I think that's another big thing too that they're really trying to hammer home with the DualSense is like it's about the experience as well.
They want full immersion, because the DualSense, the 3D audio, which I haven't truly gotten to get a good gist of at this point, because I don't think I've played the right game that really uses it well. And also, I mean, I play games really loud all the time. It all sounds the same to me after a while. There are certain games, though, that I'm sure like down the road are going to make it really apparent that you're playing it.
Oh, yeah. Like, I can just think of right now. Like, there are certain games I'm just trying to picture in my head, like what it would be like that are playable on PS5.
Have you ever played the game Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice?
Yes.
That would be the immediate one that comes to mind.
Yes, that's a good one. Just thinking about the VR standpoint, though, of like just wearing the headset and then feeling, having.
I mean, Resident Evil 7 was VR. That would probably be a really, really terrifying example.
Oh yeah. Star Wars Squadrons, even
I've heard great things about that VR.
Like just like if your ship gets hit like on on like just the top of the cockpit, and then if you're wearing that headset, just feeling something kind of tingle on the top of your head. Or, and then as just looking around your cockpit in VR and just having the controller in your hands acting like it's the
you could feel your almost like your body shaking, like everything's going.
Yeah.
Don't worry, the PlayStation chair is going to exist too.
Oh yeah.
Straps you in on the legs.
Yeah. Talking about like a personal experience, I've only played one PSVR game, and I played it at a friend's house, and it was Batman Arkham VR, and that was really, really cool. Like it was really short, but I really, really enjoyed it because I know this is so cliche to say, but it really made you feel like you were Batman. Because
oh my god!
Like,
every
I know
like,
that's
junkie
really
video is about to go nuts on that one.
I know. It sounds so cliche, but like when you're wearing that VR headset, like you're literally looking in a mirror, you're putting on the bat suit, you're typing stuff into the bat computer, you're literally throwing batarangs. Like it is so cool. I loved it so much. Now I highly doubt we're gonna get an Arkham VR follow up or anything of that nature, because obviously Rocksteady is very, very hard at work. At least I hope they are on Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. But, dude, like having just Marvel right now, Marvel games, they have Iron Man VR. I haven't played that. I want to play that, but I'm not about to drop. How much is PSVR on Iron Man VR and replaying Arkham VR?
Yeah, if you're going to do it just for like one or two games, it's not really the best investment. That's the thing with this new version of PSVR is going to be dependent on like how much they use it.
Now, I know Valve, they've obviously had a good history with Microsoft importing their games to Xbox consoles. But just imagine if PSVR 2 is a thing, and one of the launch titles is the PS5 port of Half-Life Alyx.
That would be pretty incredible too, yeah.
I'd be surprised, number one, the fact that even happened, but that would be amazing. Like, they would sell so many units just on day one, because you have this easily accessible... Because, again, it's not a PC where it's like, oh man, it's my PC, like, do I have the spec to run VR games and support VR? Instead, it's more of a matter of like that, hey, I own the console, I own the headset. All I have to do is pop in the game. I am good. Like that's all I have to worry about.
The one little gimmick that I'm really looking forward to, and I don't think they'll do it because it would be a really, really niche thing, but like if you could imagine the haptic feedback on something like, say, a steering wheel controller, and being able to play like a Gran Turismo VR, because I've played a VR racing sim, and even just with just the sound in your ear and just seeing like the track around you, that's incredible enough. But can you imagine the feeling you get of driving with like the shaking of the steering wheel and everything else? Like that would be just, every gearhead would just fucking kill for that.
Oh, most definitely.
I'm not a big racing game guy, but I would do that just for the experience.
Like I'm what you would call a gearhead. I love cars, automobiles, racing, like all of that good stuff, and I would love to have an experience like that. But I don't know if I would pay out the nose for it.
That's the other thing too. It's the price.
Like, would I love to have like a full racing sim set up with like 3 monitors and a racing chair and a wheel and everything else? Absolutely. But I mean, I'm also very content with my couch, a controller, and Forza Horizon 4 running at 4K 60. Like I'm good with that. Now
it's
again,
pretty nice.
The alternative would be awesome, but I'm good with where I'm at.
It's just that, oh man, this would be so cool. And then you realize like how much it costs to be like, okay, it's only slightly cool now.
Yeah. For sure.
The last thing I guess I want to ask about the haptic feedback is how long do you think it takes until Xbox has to follow suit? Because it feels like that's the one big feature that everybody just won't stop talking about. You almost feel like Xbox has to do something to respond to that.
Obviously, I'd probably say as early as a mid-gen refresh, but I doubt it's going to be implemented on that level. I think, if anything, knowing that Microsoft is Microsoft, probably what they would do is alongside the mid-generation refresh, they're going to keep the new series, or from what I've seen, they're calling it the Core, Xbox Core controller. They're going to keep the Core controller, and that's going to be their new standard controller moving forward. But I do think that if they make the decision to make an Elite Series 3, it'll definitely be implemented in that. I don't.
So you think if it happens, it'll be more like a bougie version of the controllers, not so much as like a normal thing.
Right. I don't think it's going to be like a standard feature moving forward. It would definitely.
It does feel like, and I might be wrong on this. You can definitely tell me because you're the one that owns the damn thing. I feel like Xbox's focus for this generation is less on so much the gimmicks, so much as they're just trying to be on everything and make it as viably open as possible, because obviously with Game Pass being on PC and almost every game being available there, the fact that you can stream it to your phone, just and the idea of how like affordable it is for most people. I don't know if they're necessarily looking to be like this super hardcore stuff so much as they just want to be almost like in everybody's house, because it's especially with like the Series S being as cheap as it is. There's a radio station local here where I'm at where their entire branding is we're your second favorite radio station. It almost feels to me like Xbox doesn't want to be like your core console so much as they just want to guarantee that you buy one because it's useful whenever like you have some downtime, and it's pretty much like cost effective for you to just use their service.
100%. Like even in that same interview where Phil Spencer talked about the deposit model, one thing that he said that their focus of this generation is like Xbox isn't as much a console anymore, as much, especially with Game Pass, because that was really kind of what pushed them in this direction, was that now Xbox is an ecosystem. Like, whether it's streaming xCloud to your phone, playing games on your PC, playing on your actual Series X, like, it doesn't matter where you play, they just want you to be playing Xbox.
It's almost like they feel like their strategy is like, okay, we're not going to be the Microsoft, like, well, I guess they are the Microsoft, but we're not going to be like the Microsoft or Apple of like PCs. We're going to be like the equivalent of like what Netflix is to videos. We want to be like that thing that everybody has, but they may not always use all the time.
Right. And like for an example, I do a lot of traveling, moving around. Like, most of my friends live in a city 2 hours away from where I live. And so I'll go over to their house and I'll stay on the weekends. Now, am I going to pack up my console and take it with me? No. As much as I would love to do something like that, I'm just not the type of person to uproot my entire setup and just...
Well, if they bring out that TV stick they're talking about, you definitely won't have to anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, one thing I did, I had a spare controller and I bought a phone clip. And so now and their house has pretty good internet because it's in a very populated city in the state in which I live. So what I'll do is I'll take my phone, pop it into this controller, and I was just sitting on the couch. They were watching The Mandalorian on their TV in the living room, and I'm sitting there on my phone with my controller clip, and I'm playing Doom Eternal. I'm mowing down demons. I'm having the time of my life, and I'm having the same Xbox console experience, but it's literally on my phone. Like, even some games in the service now, they've integrated the touchscreen controls so that you don't even have to have your controller. You could literally just have your phone. Killer Instinct is one. Minecraft Dungeons, that's another game I actually really enjoy. That one has touchscreen controls as well. There's an arcade racer, I think it's like Hot Shot Racing, that has touchscreen controls. And it's something that they're trying to implement, and I think it's a good call. And yeah, it's like, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's one of those things.
Basically, it's like they know that most people are going to stick to Sony in their house.
Yeah.
So anything outside of their house, they want that. I mean, Switches, Switch is giving them a good run of their money regardless, but like when it comes to mobile gaming with phones and stuff like that, that's a big advantage for them to do.
Exactly. And again, it kind of goes back to the ecosystem concept. It's like they don't care what device you use, as long as you are playing Xbox. And I think secretly, I say secretly, they've been implementing features along the way to kind of set the stage for this. And Game Pass was just like the final nail in the coffin that was like, okay, here it is. Here we are. Like, this is what we are now. With the Play Anywhere feature. Basically what that did was, and that's how Microsoft does their marketing mostly, is just fancy buzzwords. But with Play Anywhere, what that was more or less like your game saves are tied to your Microsoft account. So it's not necessarily tied to a box or a system. So if you played a game on your console, you could, if you have like a gaming laptop or something, or whatever the case may be, you could play it on your console. And then when you go to your PC to play the same game, your progress it's right there. It's right where you left off. Like, I was playing like I said before, I have my friend's house over like 2 hours away from here. Like, I will be playing Forza Horizon 4 throughout the week. And I can take my laptop over to their house and I can pick up right where I left off. And now that they have xCloud, I don't even have to bring my gaming PC. I can just bring my phone and everything syncs up. And it's wonderful. And now that we have Game Pass and you have all of these games and if it is on both PC and console, there's going to be a pretty good chance it has Play Anywhere. Dragon Quest XI-S, it just came out yesterday for Xbox and PC and all, pretty much the definitive edition of Dragon Quest XI.
I mean, that alone is crazy to me, to think that a Dragon Quest game being on PC, like, that still blows my mind. Like, if you told me that back in when I was a kid, playing Dragon Quest VIII on PS2, that, one day these kind of games will be on computers. I'm like, what? No. All it is on those is like Diablo. Like, that's what everybody thinks about PC.
So, so basically, like, every system, because I think originally Dragon Quest XI only came out on the PS4. Correct me, and PC. Yep. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then the definitive edition just came out on the Switch. Well, now here we are. It's yesterday. It was December 4th. And now the definitive edition has released on PS4, Xbox, and PC.
Snake, respond! Snake! Snake!
All right, we're back. We had some weird technical issues. Our recording bot just decided to up and stop. So apparently we weren't worth talking about anymore on this subject. So the question that I had in mind in the middle of our conversation that we were going into is what I thought was a really interesting thing about this entire generation that I think is so much more important than I think people are really giving it credit for, because everybody's too focused on the war still. It's the idea that right now in this current generation, there has been no better time to be a gamer when it comes to playing as many games as possible, because almost every game now is not exclusive anymore. I mean, even some major PlayStation titles like Horizon is now on Steam. So it's the idea that, barring like a very small amount of games, you pretty much can play whatever you want now and not have to fear like you're missing out of something.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think now, generally speaking, it's more or less come down to, like, if you can own whatever console you want, essentially. Like, even basically you could own a PC and a Switch, and you'd be fine. Now, granted, there's going to be situations where you're going to be missing out on some of the console exclusive games, like Spider-Man and God of War, but really that would be it. Like, I mean, Uncharted obviously is a thing too, but Sony, they're very stingy about what they choose to do and what they choose to put on PC. Street Fighter V is on PC and PS4. Horizon, as you just noted, is now on PC, but it was started out on PS4. And I would love to be able to see like Spider-Man come to the PC as well. but I highly doubt that they're ever going to do anything like that, because I think that they're very well aware that Spider-Man is one of their major system sellers. I think Demon Souls was a big seller for the PS5, but again, if I may be so bold to say, I think more people were interested in playing Miles Morales on their PS5 than they were playing Demon Souls. Not to say that Demon Souls doesn't have a market, because I absolutely believe that it does have that market. I just think more people wanted to sink their teeth into Spider-Man Miles Morales than Demon Souls. I'm going off on a tangent, and it's very clear that I love Spider-Man, but I would love to see Spider-Man on PC eventually at some point, but out again, like you said, with the exception of the 1 or 2 or 3 games, whatever. Yeah, I mean, you could get one home console and your PC, and more or less you could probably play 99% of the games that are coming out right now anyway.
100%. And the fact that, like, honestly, the only games right now that I see that just aren't coming available to people are just Nintendo games. For the most part, you can almost guarantee that the biggest games of the year are likely going to be playable somewhere. That isn't just one single place. You know, apart from a very, very select few, like obviously The Last of Us, or at this point Ghost of Tsushima, which I am actually suspicious whether or not that game might actually go on PC, because I think that's a game that would work really well there. For the most part, if we're talking the best games on console, there's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to play them even if you don't own the console that they debuted on. And I think, you know, back in the day where, like on PlayStation 2, for example, like there was a definitive line between PS2 and Xbox games. There was a massive differentiation in the library. Whereas now, it's maybe like 2% of the entire library compared to like probably 15-20%.
I do think Ghost of Tsushima would be... I don't know. Did Infamous ever make it?
No, that's a game that might have, but I think because it's an older series, unless they revived it, I don't know if it would go.
Like, did Resistance go to PC?
Nope.
Okay.
Like the PlayStation on PC stuff is very, very recent, so
I think Ghost of Tsushima would be a good one to do, especially since they have that new multiplayer. Well, I say new; it came out probably like a month or 2 ago, but relatively new multiplayer DLC that was just a free update. I think that alone would make it a good contingent to put it on PC. And plus, I mean, when you think about what a lot of PCs can do now, especially with the 30 series graphics cards and whatever it is that AMD is doing, dude, that game would look gorgeous on PC. But anyway, I digress. But the point is that, yes, absolutely. I think that you're more than capable now to play a lot of games. Like, again, with the exception of Nintendo. And what's surprising to me at this point is how, like, just the third-party games that have been ported to the Switch at this point. Doom Eternal is coming to the Switch in like a few days, or at least a few days away from this recording anyway. And then there's already The Witcher 3. Now, granted, I mean, Witcher 3, it's not my type of game personally, but I have played it on the Switch, and it's amazing to see a game of that caliber with that much going on to be on something like the Switch.
it may be in a lower quality, but it's still there.
Exactly. Like, I mean, if you can tolerate 240p in handheld mode at 25 frames per second, hey, you have The Witcher 3. But jokes aside, though, like, you have The Witcher on a portable system. I love Doom. Doom is one of my favorite gaming franchises, and I have the Doom games on my Switch as well as my Xbox. And I have them on my Switch and Xbox because, well, I play these Doom games docked on my Switch. Absolutely not, because I have them on Xbox and I have them on PC where I can play them in better fidelity with better quality. I literally only have them on the Switch, so it's like, hey, again, like if I'm traveling, if I'm going to another state or I'm going to a city 2 hours away, I can just throw my Switch in my bag and I have these experiences in my hands. Like, Borderlands is one of my favorite franchises as well. And when they announced the Legendary Collection, which was the enhanced version of the first game, the second, and the Handsome Collection, which is the second and the pre-sequel with everything in it, on the Switch, I was like, dude. Now, Borderlands, this is not the first time Borderlands has been portable. It was on the Vita, but the Vita version was trash. I don't know if you ever played that or saw it, but it was not good.
No, the exposure to the Vita for me was just to the PlayStation TV little thing, and that was only for a very select few games. So,
and yeah, it's cool to see how, even again with the point you made, like even then, now if you have to just pick one system, most games now are playable on a lot of the games are now being played or can be played on all the systems. I just had a brain fart, my bad. But so yeah, granted you're going to make some sacrifices from console to console, but like you said, they're there. The Switch, honestly, is the Xbox 360 that I wanted when I was a kid, because all of these games that were on the 360 that I loved so much, like, they're there. They're on the Switch. Like Borderlands 2, Skyrim, the BioShock collection. Like, literally the only thing missing that would make the Switch just fantastic for me personally would be the Return to Arkham collection. Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. I would love that. But outside of that, like, yeah, man, like it's crazy to see just like what you can do now with the modern technology and all the advances that we have, and just again having the ability to play all these games on anything you want. It's pretty cool to see.
It's pretty safe to say that, as cliche as this sentence is, it is 100% the best time to be a gamer. And anybody who says otherwise really, really is playing the sports team level, my side is better than your side game way too hard. There's no doubt.
It's not as cliche as saying it really makes you feel like Batman. So I'd say you're doing pretty good there.
This generation really makes me feel like I'm a gamer.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, with that being said, we're almost at like an hour and a half. I think this is probably a good place to stop. So, this has been very good. For a pilot episode, this has been very, very nice. So thank you so much for coming out here. And I hope anybody who's listening to this, whether it's on YouTube or the various audio services that I can get this sucker on, that you guys enjoy this too. And obviously we'll be doing more of this down the line. I'm not sure the schedule format that we were. I mean, if we can record every Saturday, it ends up being a pretty nice setup, but it also depends too on how things go. I mean, obviously we got the holiday season coming up, so there's a lot of things to think about. But depending on whether this is a weekly show, bi-weekly, we'll figure that out as we go. This is more of a trial than it is anything else. Unless Avery here hates my fucking guts and doesn't want to talk to me anymore, which I would understand anyway. But
nah, I enjoy these conversations, just talking about gaming and the industry and everything as a whole. It's good to just have discussions like this, especially with what you mentioned earlier. There's people that just play their side, and it's like, oh well, if you play on a PlayStation, I think you're a piece of like, no, no. Like, do I have my biases and my preferences? Like, absolutely. But I'm not, it's nice to be able to talk to someone that is open about this kind of thing. And, I can't really put it into words, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, I mean,
as long as you're not a Stadia user, in which case, you are a literal piece of shit.
No, I do not do that.
That's a joke. But yeah, that's going to do it. So thank you so much for checking us out. If you want to find more with me, you can find me at CS Radical on Twitter, also YouTube at CS Radical, and CS Radical on Twitch. Avery, do you have any plugs that you have, or are you just cool with just being the second fiddle here and just the mystery man, as it would be?
I'm cool with being a mystery man. That sounds pretty nice.
So you're the mysterious stranger, as Fallout would go, so.
Absolutely.
Well, that is going to do it for this first episode of Logic and Pixels. Thank you so much for checking us out, and we will see you whenever that may be. So have a good one. Take it easy, everybody.